What's up guys, my name is Danny or Daniel. I draw cars and turn them into 3D prints using HueForge, and I also do HueForge tutorials for all of you. Today we are going to talk about how you can turn a 2D image into a 3D print using standard mode in HueForge. If you're new to HueForge, this video should be really helpful for you, and if you've been using HueForge, this should also help you learn the new UI changes that just dropped with 0.9. We're going to do this series a little bit differently. I'm going to do a 3-part series. This is going to be the first part with standard mode. We're going to do color pop and color match using the same image across all three. The reason that we're going to do a 3-part series for this is because I want to show you can use different modes within HueForge to get different results with the same image. There's no real right and wrong way to use HueForge. It's more of just like what is the best way for your particular project and what kind of results are you looking to get. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. This video is sponsored by Overture. When it comes to 3D printing, quality matters. That's why Overture is one of the most popular choices for 3D printing filament among creators. Engineered for consistency and precision, Overture Filament delivers flawless prints every time. Whether you're printing HueForges, functional prints, or detailed design, Overture's wide range of materials ensure smooth printing and reliable results. They offer everything from PLA to polycarbonate and everything in between. If you're in need of affordable filament for your next 3D printing project, go check out Overture using the link down below in the description. So whenever you first download HueForge, you're going to download a zip file. You need to find that zip file, and then we're going to right click on it and extract all of the files. You're going to extract all of those files to whatever permanent location you want your HueForge folder in. You can change it around later on, but it's just a good idea to have like a permanent HueForge folder somewhere else for updates in the future. Like you can see here, all of the updates that I've had. So anyway, so whenever you extract, you'll come in, you have your HueForge folder, and when you come in, you have a HueForge exe. This is where you'll be able to get the different tutorials. You'll find tools. This is where your seashell test is to measure your TDs. There's also your filament JSONs. We'll talk more about that in a later video, but just know that whenever you add a filament to your filament library, this is where it's at. So this is where, all of your files that you're ever going to need are. Whenever I have a new instance of HueForge, I always pin it to my taskbar just to make it easy. I'm sorry if I just blinded anyone with light mode. So whenever you first open HueForge, this is what it's going to look like. You might have a few more filament tabs over here on the left, and you should probably see unowned instead of owned. You'll probably see all of your unowned filament because you haven't added anything to your library yet. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come up to preferences and we're going to turn on dark mode because this is very, very bright. And I don't know very many people that like working in light mode, but yeah, so just turn it into dark mode. Now, before we get too deep into it, you can see over here on the right hand side that this is where we drop our images that we're wanting to turn into HueForges. So let's go ahead and grab the image that we are going to use throughout this. This image is going to be really good for this series because we can tackle it in standard, color pop, and color match. There's no one way that is correct to tackle this image. And personally, when I first started HueForge, I didn't necessarily want one-to-one results. I wanted it close, but I didn't necessarily need one-to-one results. I just wanted to see what HueForge could do. So when you're first starting out, keep that in mind that this is an artist tool. This isn't just an imagery creator. This isn't going to do all the work for you. You still have to, know how to blend colors together. Whenever you're first starting out, we have the filament library here with different filaments that you can just go in and play around with before you add any of your own. It's very important to understand what TD is. I have a video here if you want to go learn more about TD, but just know that TD directly correlates with how opaque or transparent your filament is. A low TD being like a 0.3 to a 4 is pretty opaque. Somewhere between 4 and 8 is pretty versatile. And then anything above an 8 TD is really transparent. And so the more transparent the filament, the more blending that we'll get. And it's really important to measure your TDs. I also have a video on the seashell test if you're just starting out again. If you're not just starting out, then I would recommend getting a Pt.1 or a Pt.1S, depending on when you're watching this video. I have a link down below in the description if you want to go check that device out. It makes measuring TDs so much easier depending on how many you have. So again, you need to know the TDs of your filament, but before you start buying a bunch of filament for HueForge, just go into the library, play around with certain blends, play around with different colors, and see if you can match up your projects. See how well different colors match and how well colors blend with each other. It's super important to know if you have like a really opaque blue filament, we'll just grab this dark blue matte, and then you put a really high transparency red on top of it, you get this like purple area in between. And that's how we're blending filaments. That's why it's called filament painting, is because we're using the transparencies of our filaments to get these desired results. And you can see a little bit more purple down here. So same thing, whenever you're first starting out, it's super important to understand how this works. Uh, we can use like let's grab a high TD yellow and we'll slap it up top. I'll turn off this blue, and this is just for example's sake. You can see that there's no orange here. It's just this orange blending area. This center is the color core. This is not only a functional piece of HueForge, but it's also a visual representation to show you what's going on as far as blends are concerned. Each of these lines directly correlates to the layers that you're at. You can see that each of them has a number, like this one is at layer 24. And also, whenever you hover over the flags, it will show you the name of the filament as well as the TD. Something for everybody to know is that to turn off a filament, let's say that I didn't want to use this yellow, I hit spacebar on my keyboard to enable or disable this particular filament. That is such a useful hotkey to know whenever you're starting out. So yeah, so this is how HueForge works, is we're blending filaments throughout the color core. Again, we're in standard. So what is standard mode? If you come up here to mesh mode, you can actually see that we're in combo. Whenever you first start out, it's in combo. What is standard mode? So standard mode is the way that HueForge is looking at our image to create this 3D mesh for us. If we come over here to model geometry, it's right underneath your filament library. You can see that we have image format and it's set to color. If we turn this to luminance, this is how HueForge is looking at your image. So it's creating the mesh based on the whitest areas and the blackest areas of your image. So the darker areas, those are going to be the lowest part of your mesh, and the brighter parts of the image are going to be the tallest part of your mesh. And you can see that if I turn this to the side and zoom in, you can see that the whiter areas of the smoke are the tallest parts of this mesh. What this color core is representing is if you turn this to the side and we zoom in, you can see it's starting with black, going to red, then there's some yellow here and some white. This is what it's doing. It's not like you aren't trying to start at the bottom and match up colors from the bottom of the image and work your way up. It kind of looks like that when you first start out, but just know that it's how we're stacking filaments on top of each other to get the desired results. I've seen some people on the Facebook and Reddit group trying to they're like trying to, whenever they're first starting out, they're using colors that they see at the bottom and the base of the images and working their way up. So like in this particular image, they would like use black on the base layer like you normally would, but then they would try to use red and then they'd try to stack gray on top of that and orange. Like it's just not how HueForge works. It's just all from the side. So just remember that when you're first starting out. So let's go back over to filament library. I just wanted to show you how standard mode is looking at your image. That is only standard mode that's looking at it with like that black and white filter and in luminance. If we come back over here, we have tabs. You probably see a few more tabs up here. I've already messed around with the config a little bit. PLA and PLA plus, having those separate can be kind of a pain. So if you come up to filaments, you can see that we have type and we can merge PLA plus and PLA. And now it's merged everything into one tab. I don't really think that there's a reason to have them separate, but just know that that feature is there for you. You might have a reason to have it with any filament. If you're not using TPU, you can turn it off and then it will take these tabs away that you're seeing. Now, when you're first getting into it and you have measured the TD of your filament, you come down here and add new filament. At this point, you can use the color that you see. Let's say that we're doing a green filament. You'll hit OK. You can change the type if you're not using PLA here. You change the brand. You change the name of whatever filament that is. You change the TD. Secondary is a new feature. This is showing color shift filaments, glow filaments, and fluorescent filaments. If it's none of those, don't worry about secondary. And then you can add tags to further organize your libraries. If you see that, let's say that you're in the filament library, we'll go back to unowned. So you see here that we have like a Sunlu Meadow White. If you've measured the TD of your Sunlu Meadow White at home and you know it's not at 8, we can still click on owned. And then if we come over, we can right click and we can either change the color or we can edit the filament. And if we edit the filament, this is where you can change the TD of it. And this is where you can just add add different things. And it's that easy to add your own filaments to the library. You just come down here to new filament and you can change filaments. It's super simple. But I just wanted to show you that. This drop-down menu is where you will change the filter. So if you want to filter by certain colors, or if you want to filter by the brand or the TD, this is where you'll do it. And then next to certain filaments like bamboo, there are affiliate links. Those are not for me, those are for HueForge. So if you're going to buy these filaments, if you find a filament within HueForge that you really love and you want to buy it, do Steve a favor. He is a solo creator, and click on his affiliate link. Don't get me wrong, I would love for you to use my affiliate link too, but he has done so much work for this program, and none of this would be possible without him. So for sure, give him your pennies. Now that we have a base understanding of the color core, we have a base understanding of the filament library, we've turned our HueForge into dark mode. The next thing that we need to know is most HueForges are a very small layer height. Whenever you first come into HueForge, your layer height and all of your dimensions for your HueForge are here underneath your filament library. So we've got detail size, we've got layer height, your base layer, base thickness, blend depth, width, and height. Now, layer height is exactly what you think it is. If you've been 3D printing for any amount of time, you know that most 3D prints are print at a 0.2 layer height. With almost all printers with a 0.4 nozzle, you can get all the way down to 0.04 layer heights pretty reliably. It will show defects if you have issues with your extruder or have issues with a nozzle. So just be aware of that. If you have a Bamboo Lab printer, I know that you can get all the way down to 0.02 layer heights, and I'm sure that there are other printers out there that can accomplish that on a 0.4 nozzle. The only time that you want to go down to a 0.2 nozzle is really if you have really small lettering and small details within your HueForge. The 0.2 nozzle just makes it a little bit more crisp whenever you're doing really small letters. The base layer is the first layer that's going to print before we start printing at the 0.08 layer heights. Your base thickness is how thick the HueForge is. So if we just go ahead and increase this, it's 1 millimeter, so 1.48, you'll see that the whole thing just thickened up, just that base. Your blend depth, that is going to be all of this space where you are blending different colors together. So if we increase blend depth to 2.76, you'll see that you added a bunch more layers in the middle, in the color core. It gives us a lot more room. It made the mesh a little bit taller. Now you can see here mesh height is at 4.32. It makes your mesh taller so that you have more room to blend if you have a bunch of colors that you're trying to blend together. That's more for like color match. You typically won't mess with blend depth if you're in standard mode, but just something nice to know. Your width and height, that's how big your HueForge is. And it's counting everything from here. So this is a PNG. That's why there's no background. That's why it's showing the checkerboard. If you have a JPEG, it's not going to have this checkerboard. It's going to be a box just like this. And that width and height are not to the edge of what you see on the PNG. It's actually to the outer box of this entire thing. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you're in the slicer, you can actually scale HueForges. You just have to turn off uniform scale, and you can scale X and Y. It's not recommended. If you're doing a HueForge project, you might as well just do it in HueForge. It'll keep the quality. Model geometry, we've got a few more things here. We've got different brightness comps. So let's say that we had a really bright image and our whites were being blown out. We would be able to come into our brightness comp and we could dim down the image itself. And then we would get a more deep and a more rich color base for this particular image. Same thing goes for bright enhance. It brightens up the entire image. It's actually editing the image itself whenever we have edit image on. You can see whenever we have it on, it brightens the image. If we turn it off, then it keeps the stock image. So I'm gonna leave edit image on. It just makes life easier right now. But the main things you need to know are bright enhance. Standard is probably where you're gonna stay most of the time, and dim. And then you've got your power adjustments here. So if I really want to make it dim, I can just increase the power of this brightness comp. Anyway, so let's stay in standard. This image is fine the way it is. We can bright adjust here if we want to. Adjust amount is how quickly our brightness adjust is happening. So we start in medium adjust amount. This is for brightness adjust. You can see that we go up by 0.01 and 0.02. Coarse, we're going to go up by 0.1 and 0.2, so it'll be a quicker adjustment. And then your fine adjustments are really, really fine adjustments. I rarely have to use fine adjustments whenever I'm doing this, so we'll just leave that on medium. Smoothing is actually smoothing out the mesh on the top. Pay attention to this wheel. If I mess around with smoothing, you can see that it smooths out the mesh just a little bit. I don't typically use it. If I have those spikes, then I will actually just come over to spike removal, and we can turn on fast, and then it basically does the same thing. We can turn on moderate, aggressive, and we get rid of those spikes. Spikes are more prevalent in things like if you have a JPEG and you have a bunch of pixels, it's pretty prevalent in those. And then it's also prevalent in color match images. So just be aware of that. Just know where spike removal is. That's a really useful feature. While we're here and while I'm talking about the UI, let's talk about frontlit, backlit, and slicer view. We've also got glow lit. So frontlit, that's what a HueForge is. It's frontlit, right? Like we're using the light above. It's hitting the HueForge and then it's bouncing back at us. That's how we see the different colors. It's not like a lithophane. Lithophanes are backlit. So if we have backlit turned on, let's turn off this black. You can see that this is what it would look like if we printed just red. So you can do lithophanes within HueForge. This is not a great example to show you a backlit HueForge, but just know that it is there. Slicer view is how this should look in your slicer once you set up the swaps. And if it looks a little bit different, then you might have had a swap too tall or too short. And then glow lit is for if we had a glow filament, like let's say Overture's glow red, we bring that in, you can see this is what it's going to look like glow in the dark. So yeah, so that's what these are. These are how it's going to render. Wireframe, super important to know where that is. Wireframe shows you exactly how your mesh looks. So you can see here all the triangles within our mesh. You can see if we turn it on and off, it shows us exactly how the mesh is built. This is very important whenever you are making adjustments. And then you can see if you have issues within your mesh, like if you have giant spikes or whatnot. It just makes it a lot easier to visualize and see what's going on. You can see here like all of these little spikes. Very useful to know where that is. We've got reset view next to it. That'll bring us right back to how we were. You can also hit R on your keyboard and that'll reset your view as well. Now we can add a border if you want to the HueForge. I'm not going to go over that with this one, but you can add a border. And then we've got our mesh mode, standard, color match, color pop, and all the others in between. And then we've also got depth mode. So dynamic depth is going to change the height of your HueForge depending on where your topmost slider is. You can see as I move this up and down, our mesh height here is going to change. And that is just how dynamic depth works. We can typically turn on static, and as I move this topmost slider, it's not going to do anything. So just typically I'll leave static depth on if I know that I have a certain thickness that I want for HueForges. So now that we've gone through most of the UI, let's go ahead and try to get a really cool result. Again, artist tool. Okay, I'm not trying to get one-to-one results with this because when we look at this image in luminance, I'm just going to leave it in luminance so that we can keep that in mind. Um, it, there are no colors here, right? So we just want to get really cool effects within standard. And with standard, I've already set up the color core to how it should be. It should start with your darkest colors and work your way up to your brightest colors. So let's grab, I want a more sporty looking HueForge, so I want to keep the red in. The white's a little overpowering here, but I want this car to be red, and then I want maybe the background with the dragon. I could probably swing a green, but you're going to see that we may have a few issues with green and it trying to overpower the entire image. But here we can just play around with it a little bit. And as we hover over certain layers, you can see if I hover over certain areas of the mesh, it'll highlight what that layer is changing. So that's super useful to see. If I add like this green to here, you can start to see what is going to affect it. So maybe I want the car to be a different color, then I know that I need to bring that down to here, and it changes up the entire dynamic of the HueForge. This video is more of a UI tutorial because standard mode is typically the easiest when it comes to making a HueForge because it does all the work for you here. We don't have too much to change. It's more about what looks good to you. So let's add in this yellow just above. And standard mode is a really good way to really understand how filaments blends. Now let's bring in this glow in the dark blue just to see what we can get here. And all I'm doing is trying to get a coherent HueForge and make it look really cool. Again, your audience is never going to see this image over here, right? So it's not that big of a deal if you can't get colors directly one-to-one in standard mode. The only time that it really matters is if you're doing like a commission, if you're doing this as a business, right? So that'll be a time where you need color match. But most of the time you can get a really good looking HueForge if you are able to compromise on the colors and where they're at. So just keep that in mind. Like, don't be so hard on yourself if you can't get it really one-to-one, because it is very difficult to do that with filament and with swap by layer. A lot of people think that it's super simple, but considering we're doing swap by layer, we're not doing multiple swaps per layer. It is definitely a challenge in and of itself. So yeah, so now we've changed the dynamic of this image completely, right? I've done 3 different prints with this particular super image. And I'm really happy with the way that this looks. If we go back over to color, this looks nothing like our original, but this still looks really cool and it looks really good. So I wanted to show in today's video that don't be afraid to make compromises when you're first starting out. I want you to get used to blending filaments and blending different colors together and playing around with like how you would mix paints together, right? Like I don't want you to get so wrapped up in that perfect hue forge, because it's just not going to happen when you're first starting out. It's like anything, there's a learning curve. So hopefully these videos are going to help you understand a little bit more about HueForge. Again, there wasn't much to show you in standard. I wanted to talk more about the UI and what's changed, for the people that have been doing HueForge for a while. I think one thing that I skipped over is in the color core, since we don't have sliders anymore, you can click this ruler and now you can see at what layer height our layers are at. That is kind of important. And then another thing I totally missed, describe. Whenever you save a HueForge, you'll get a describe text. If you've lost the describe text for your particular project and you just have the project, you can click describe and it'll give you the same information. But this is going to save, whenever you save your project, so you don't have to like copy and paste this anywhere. But this will give you exactly what you need to know for the slicer. Now, as far as the slicer is concerned, there are slicer settings for HueForge in the HueForge Discord. I don't want to go over slicer settings necessarily in these videos because each printer is different, and I don't want to tell somebody the wrong thing and then have them have issues on their 3D printer, especially if they don't run a Bamboo or they don't run a K2 Plus or something like that, like the printers that I own. So just know that if you have questions about slicer settings and you own HueForge, we do have a Discord, and that Discord is closed off to the public. It is only for HueForge members. So it's a lot of helpful people that are also learning the program and that are also doing really cool projects. So go check that out. You should have gotten an invite link whenever you purchase HueForge. If you have an expired link, go to the store page where you purchase HueForge and go to your purchases. There should be a link there. And then if you're having issues finding it, just message the store chat and Steve will get you a link to the Discord. I hope that this helps get your feet wet whenever you're first starting out. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Again, I'm going to do 2 more videos. I'm going to do color pop and color match next, so that we'll get more complicated with the same image so that you can see how we can tackle these images within different modes of HueForge to get more color accurate results. So I hope that this video has helped you in some way, shape, or form. If it did, please like, share, and subscribe. I have YouTube memberships here and my Patreon if you want to go check those out. Those get you exclusive access to my Discord. Without the support of my patrons and my YouTube members, this would not be possible. Also, go check out Overture's Filament. I have a link down below in the description, and I have a 10% off coupon for anybody that watches my videos. So please go check them out, and I'll pop up some more helpful videos right now so that you can go check those out, and I will see you in the next one.